Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one. The introduction. On a crisp autumn evening, the small town of Maplewood lay shrouded in an uncharacteristic haze of uncertainty. Known for its picturesque streets lined with maple trees and a close-knit community, the town had never experienced the kind of horror that would soon grip it. The sun had dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows that danced with an air of foreboding. Detective Sarah Novak sat at her desk in the Maplewood Police Department. The dim light of her desk lamp spilling over cluttered folders and case files. An air of quiet competence surrounded her, a seasoned investigator familiar with the threads of human darkness lurking just beneath the surface of suburbia. Her attention was drawn to a peculiar report that had arrived earlier that weekend, unusually high number of missing person cases, all originating from different neighborhoods, yet converging upon the same chilling question. Why? Maplewood, she thought, was a town where doors were rarely locked and children played freely. Yet, as the reviews of the report suggested, signs of a predator may have established a foothold, stalking the shadows with the night as their veil. As Sarah delved deeper into the file, an unsettling intuition prickled at the back of her mind, a reflection of the fear now woven into the fabric of the town. The first case was that of Emily Wright, a 17-year-old high school student beloved by her peers. She had vanished without a trace 5 days prior, her cheerful laughter now echoing only in memories. The next was Tom Jenkins, a single father and local mechanic, missing for 3 days. No warning signs, no notes, just silence. With each case, the bonds of trust in Maplewood weakened, communities fragmenting under the weight of fear. The quiet hum of autumn faded, replaced by whispers and anxious glances, as Sarah prepared to unravel the enigma that threatened to rewrite the town's history. The hunt to restore normalcy was about to begin, and she knew it would lead her into the heart of darkness. The victim. Emily Wright was the kind of girl who lit up a room. With her radiant smile and easy laughter, she was known for her kindness, a trait that made her popular among her classmates at Maplewood High. On this particular day, her absence in the bustling hallways felt like a missing piece in a carefully constructed puzzle. Her friends huddled together in anxious whispers, glancing at the empty desk she once occupied. She had last been seen leaving school on a Friday evening, a slight chill in the air hinting at the changing seasons. Emily had plans to attend a friend's birthday party, but she never arrived, a reality unthinkable to those who loved her. The celebrations that should have been filled with gaiety turned somber, the balloons now a reminder of the joy that flickered and vanished. Sarah dove into the details of Emily's life, seeking insights that might illuminate the darkness hovering over Maplewood. She learned about the teen's penchant for volunteering at the local animal shelter, how she found solace in caring for abandoned pets, offering them the affection they hadn't known. It was this side of Emily, the nurturer, that made it all the more difficult to grasp her sudden disappearance. In the comfort of her small bedroom, decorated with posters of distant galaxies and abundance of plush toys, Emily became a ghost amid memories. Her mother, Laura, anxiously flicked through social media, hoping for any sign, any message that might suggest her daughter was safe. Friends tweeted about her. Candlelight vigils were organized, and local news stations clamored to cover the growing story, rising to the forefront of what people now refer to as a town in crisis. Yet, while Emily's vibrant life seemed to shimmer in the memories of others, Sarah sensed there might have been more beneath the surface. Each interview revealed facets of Emily's life, the hidden pressures of teenage existence, the silent struggles, and the videos she had shared that spoke of loneliness cloaked beneath the radiant exterior. In every fragment Sarah collected, the mystery deepened. Either someone knew exactly where Emily was, or there existed a chasm of darkness capable of swallowing that which the world deemed precious and tender. The crime scene. The following day dawned overcast, the sky heavy with clouds as though mirroring the weight of uncertainty that hung over the town. Sarah arrived at the location where Emily had last been seen, an abandoned lot at the edge of Maplewood, overgrown with weeds and forgotten remnants of a past life. The air stood still, thick with the smell of damp earth and decay, a discordant reminder of the innocence that had vanished from this quiet community. Police tape flapped gently in the breeze, cordoning off the area as uniformed officers moved about with purpose. As Sarah stepped beneath the barrier, she felt the cool touch of apprehension crawl over her skin. It was her responsibility to uncover the truth hidden within the disarray, a task that weighed heavily on her conscience as she approached the gathering of officers. This wasn't just a crime scene. This was the last place a young girl had felt sick. A forensic technician adjusted her gloves, bending to collect evidence. Leaves crunched beneath Sarah's feet as she surveyed the area, her sharp eyes scanning for any detail that could lead them closer to Emily's whereabouts. The shadows cast by nearby trees stretched across the lot, conspiring to obscure what might lie beneath them. As she paced near a rusted fence, something caught her attention, a flash of color tangled in the underbrush. Kneeling down to inspect, a small black and white polka-dotted hairband emerged. Unmistakably Emily. The sight sent a cold shiver through her, and within moments, the world around her narrowed, buzzing as she felt the pulse of the investigation quicken. A nearby officer approached, adjusting his cap nervously. "Detective, we're working on collecting the items that have been found. We think we might have something." He gestured with a gloved hand toward a small plastic evidence bag that glimmered in the muted light. Inside lay an inconspicuous silver bracelet, engraved with the initials E.W. Sarah held the bag delicately, her chest tightening. The bracelet had been a gift from Emily's mother for her 16th birthday, a symbol of their bond and shared laughter. Each clue was now intricately woven into a narrative that could lead them to the truth. But the darkness surrounding the case festered like an open wound. The heaviness in her heart deepened as she passed by her team, a growing resolve igniting within her. The echoes of Emily's laughter would not fade into the shadows. They would track every lead, decipher every piece of evidence. They owed it to her loved ones, shattered by fear and uncertainty, counted on them to find her. And Sarah was determined to uncover what had wound through Maplewood, threatening to take even more from this once peaceful community. The early investigation. With the discovery of Emily's belongings, the Maplewood Police Department had been thrust into high gear, a cogs in the clock momentum igniting within the precinct. Sarah gathered her team, a mixed group of seasoned veterans and bright-eyed young recruits ready to embark on the painstaking process of piecing together the shards of Emily's life. A life that had, until recently, shimmered with the promise of youth. Sarah's first step was to request a timeline of Emily's last known movements. Each detail, each misstep was crucial. They traced back to that fateful Friday afternoon when the bell had rung, signaling the end of the school day. Witnesses were canvassed and every student who had crossed Emily's path was approached. As interviews commenced, anxiety crackled through the air, mirrored by the fears of parents and the tears of friends. Left wondering. In the school cafeteria, a student named Jake spoke hesitantly, his gaze cast down at the plastic tray in front of him. I saw her talking to someone, he revealed, his voice barely above a whisper. A guy I didn't recognize. They seemed I don't know close. The revelation sent a ripple through the investigation. Who was this mystery figure? Sarah pressed Jake for details, but he could only recall a silhouette, tall figure dressed in a dark hoodie, enigmatic and fleeting like a wisp of smoke. With every fragment of information collected, Sarah assembled a composite sketch in her mind, speculating on the identity of the stranger who may have captured Emily's attention. Meanwhile, a barrage of digital forensics began. The techs identified Emily's portable devices, analyzing her social media profiles, and any text messages exchanged in the days leading up to her disappearance. To the average observer, her online presence radiated warmth, a chronicle of school events, volunteer work, and snapshots of laughter. Hidden threads surfaced under closer scrutiny, however. Exchanges with peers hinted at a deeper emotional world where insecurities simmered and cravings for acceptance surged. Then came another significant lead. Emily's phone was pinged near the abandoned lot shortly before she disappeared. The data, once retrieved, painted a chilling path. A last known location, a flickering signal of communication unraveling into silence. A connection vanished. Sarah absorbed the leads carefully, aware that hope could be as fragile as glass. Feelings of urgency pulsated within, for each day that swept through the calendar was an hour stolen from Emily and from the hearts of those who loved her. The early investigation had awakened Maplewood to a reality it had long chosen to ignore. Sarah, her resolve hardening, vowed to give a voice to the silence, shaping the narrative that had turned a vibrant young girl into a haunting specter. As her team gathered evidence, one thing became evidently clear. They were chasing something much larger than a missing person. They were entering the labyrinth of human darkness where shadows linger and threats lay in wait. The dead ends. Days turned into a torturous rhythm of hope and despair as Sarah and her team pursued every lead that emerged. The tension in the precinct intensified as the residents of Maplewood plastered posters of Emily across every corner, each child's face an echo of innocence, each adult's gaze a mirror reflecting mounting dread. With every passing hour, the sense of urgency became a weight too heavy to bear. Yet, as the initial excitement faded, the investigation began to hit a series of alarming dead ends. The first lead, the dark hooded figure described by Jake, yielded nothing tangible. An appeal for information around the local high school turned up a handful of similar sightings, reported on different nights, but nothing specific to Emily. It was as if the shadows had conspired to swallow her whole, with potential witnesses buried beneath their own fears. Days blurred into frustration as Sarah sifted through a chaotic array of investigative reports. Text messages from Emily led to nowhere. Friends who had spent time with her expressed confusion rather than insight, each clinging to fragments of their last conversations, as they too entered a state of disbelief. The emotional toll was evident. Even inside the precinct, voices once animated descended into hushed tones, mirroring the tightening grip of despair. A visit to the abandoned lot brought little resolution. The hairband and bracelet recovered offered no new clues, becoming tragic tokens whispered of a grim fate, rather than items that would lead to answers. Environmental scans processed for any telltale things such as footprints or discarded belongings provided only the echo of emptiness. As the weeks dragged on, Sarah felt the burden of the investigation crest like a tidal wave. and what had begun as a passionate pursuit became a pursuit of ghosts. Each search party, returning with nothing but tired faces and hollow resolves, frayed the fabric of the community even further. The trust that once defined Maplewood began to splinter. Whispers turned into pointed accusations. Neighbors cast wary glances at one another. And the innocence of everyday life began to erode. In a rare moment of stillness, Sarah stepped outside the precinct, her breath visible in the autumn air. The branches of the trees swayed gently overhead, and the town hummed with tension. No longer able to ignore the dark specter looming over them, she resolved to gather the community for a meeting, a moment, to redirect their anxieties into collective action. They needed to stand united against the fear that threatened to consume not only Emily's memory, but also the very essence of what it meant to live in Maplewood. As she headed back inside, a flicker of thought crossed her mind. What if the threat wasn't external? Elements of the case clung to her, whispering at the edges of her consciousness. Could there be something about Emily's life that they were missing? Voices rang out in her mind. Where there are shadows, there are oftentimes secrets waiting to be unearthed. The hunt was far from over. It was merely evolving. A break in the case. A week after the community meeting, the somber atmosphere within Maplewood stirred with a flicker of hope. Detective Sarah Novak sat at her desk, poring over the details again, desperately searching for patterns that might have eluded her in the past. In the midst of renewed frustration, a phone call from the forensics team shattered the stillness of her thoughts. Detective, we've got something you need to see. The urgency in Officer Grant's voice left no room for pleasantry. Sarah's pulse quickened as she gathered her notes and rushed to the lab. Inside the forensic room, an array of items lay spread out, illuminated under bright light. Evidence collected from Emily's cell phone was finally yielding results. They had managed to recover several deleted messages within the threads that had previously baffled them. The encryption used to protect Emily's privacy had held for a time, but now it offered a glimpse into her world, a world layered with complexities and hidden emotions. As Grant displayed the recovered messages on a screen, Sarah's heart raced. They scrolled through discussions about school struggles, friendships, and aspirations, but one thread stood out like a beacon amid a sea of ordinary. It was an exchange with a user whose profile bore only a pseudonym. Mysteriousson. They discussed meeting up after school, and the tone shifted significantly from the lightheartedness displayed in her other conversations. With every reply, Mysteriousson cultivated an aura of intimacy that felt both alluring and unsettling. Can you trace the IP address? Sarah asked breathlessly, her mind racing. It was raw, emotional interaction that hinted at a bond deeper than casual friendship. We're working on it, but we needed a bit of time. As anticipation electrified the room, Sarah glanced over at Officer Jane Harlow, new to the team, but already proving to be a resourceful investigator. Can you track down any of Emily's recent friends who might have been aware of this conversation? Talk to them anonymously. A different alias if you need to ensure their comfort. Jane nodded. Determination etched across her face. The investigation was ignited anew. With urgency replacing despair, Sarah redirected her energy, reaching out to her network, determined to unearth the young person hiding behind mysterious. A flurry of activity unfolded as new leads emerged, including possible sighting reports of a figure resembling Emily's online conversation. And then came a crucial break-a-tip from a local barista who mentioned a strange patron who had been asking about Emily days before her disappearance. The description matched the vague sightings reported around the school, a thread entwined between the digital and the real, as the forensics team continued their work, mapping the connections between relationships. Fear gave way to hope once again. The investigation had taken a turn. The pieces started aligning, creating an intricate tapestry. The narrative shifted. What started as a missing persons case had morphed into a search for a hidden predator. And Sarah was growing increasingly determined to find the truth before more shadows stretched into the heart of Maplewood. The suspect. The grip of determination tightened around Sarah as she absorbed the flurry of new information in the days following the breakthrough. Each lead fueled a fire within her, illuminating paths that had previously been cloaked in darkness. As the pieces began to align, one name consistently emerged from the shadows. Carter Blythe. Carter, a 21-year-old with a troubled past that had been well documented in police records, hovered on the fringes of Maplewood like a specter. Once a promising student who had attended the very high school Emily had now enriched with her absence, he had fallen sharply off course. Of substance abuse and reckless behavior led to several confrontations with law enforcement. More recently, he had been seen loitering around the local cafes and high schools, often drawing the attention of worried parents and concerned friends. Several eyewitnesses who had spotted him in close proximity to Emily before her disappearance could describe him the dark hoodie, the brooding figure lingering on the fringes of youth gathering. A palpable tension rippled through the precinct as Sarah and her team compiled their findings, painting a portrait of a man whose life echoed with warning signs. The decision was made to bring him in for questioning. A palpable energy coursed through Sarah as she coordinated the operation. This could be the moment that changed everything. With every officer briefed and battlegrounds of the investigation mapped, Sarah felt the stakes rise. On the day of the interrogation, Sarah entered the cold confines of the interrogation room, her heart hammering against her chest. Opposite her, Carter sat slouched, an air of disinterest draped around him. He glanced up, his striking blue eyes revealing a mix of defiance and apathy. "Carter Blythe," she began, her voice steady. "You've been living under the radar lately. I'd like to discuss Emily Wright with you." A fleeting grin passed over his lips. "What's to discuss? Kids go missing. It happens." Sarah leaned in, defiance tinged with conviction. She wasn't just a kid, Carter. She was a daughter, a sister, and a friend. You were seen around the school grounds days before she disappeared. I want to know why you were there. He met her gaze, an unsettling calm coating his words. Can't a guy just hang out? But Sarah was unyielding. She matched his calm. Witnesses saw you interacting with her. Were you meeting her? What did you say to her? Carter shifted slightly, his bravado faltering. I didn't talk to her. I swear. The hardness in his tone crystallized into a glimmer of something just beneath the surface of fracture that belied the false confidence he wore like armor. With each question, Sarah drew closer, unearthing strands of rage and desperation that threatened to bubble over. He spoke in half-truths, deflections, and nuances, filled the room. As the minutes dragged on, the stakes rose. The dance of ethics and deception morphed into a battle of wills. In that moment, it felt as though Carter was hiding something far darker, something that tied him irrevocably to Emily. As Sarah concluded the interrogation without a confession, the dread lingered thickly in the air. It wasn't enough. They needed hard evidence, now a tangible link between Carter and the girl whose laughter once filled the halls of Maplewood High. But the pieces were in the air, teetering on the brink of revelation. Sarah wouldn't allow the investigation to stutter. There was still light in the darkness, and she remained resolutely determined to pierce through the lies until the truth finally welcomed them home. The trial. As the date of the trial approached, Maplewood braced itself for the culmination of a harrowing chapter in its history. The town, once idyllic and untouched by such haunting tragedies, now pulsed with anxiety and outrage as residents prepared to confront the reality of what had happened to Emily Wright. In the months following Carter Blythe's arrest, a fragile hope had emerged. This trial could, at long last, give voice to the silenced girl whose laughter seemed eternally trapped in the echoes of her absence. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was electric with a cocktail of emotions. Grief, anger, and a yearning for justice enveloped every spectator. Families sat rigidly in their seats, eyes fixated on the front of the courtroom. Sarah took her place behind the prosecution's table, reflecting on the journey that had brought her here, the layers of evidence she had diligently compiled, woven into a tapestry of a life interrupted. Emotions that had simmered beneath anxiety and determination surged as she considered the impact this moment would have on Emily's family and the community. Carter sat at the defendant's table, his demeanor unyielding, yet the subtle shifts in his posture told another story. The trial began with heartbreaking testimonies from family and friends, each one an intricate piece that illustrated Emily's vibrancy, a kind heart lost far too soon. As a childhood friend stood to recall her laughter, recounting memories that once painted a picture of carefree youth, Sarah felt her chest tighten. Each tear shed echoed against the stark walls of justice. Witness after witness built the narrative, weaving stories that entwined Emily with her friends, her hopes, and her unfulfilled dreams. Sarah methodically laid out the case, the digital evidence that had brought them to Carter, the records of his patterns around the school, and finally, the chilling encounter at the abandoned lot. With each piece presented, the prosecution's case against him began to solidify, and the room pulsed with anticipation. Defense attorney Marie Carson artfully countered, painting Carter as a scapegoat. There are no concrete links that connect my client to Emily's disappearance. No witnesses who can testify to his actions in that fatal moment. Her arguments shifted blame, cleverly sowing seeds of doubt. But Sarah understood the weight of the evidence. Beneath the surface of Carter's bravado lay fury, a rage that could have propelled someone to harm. As the trial progressed, her determination to weave together the reality of Emily's disappearance deepened. She recalled every late night spent cataloging evidence, every conversation with witnesses, and the haunting images of Emily's beaming face, frozen in time. In a pivotal moment, as cross-examination unfurled, Sarah stood in front of the courtroom, an anchor of clarity against shadows of ambiguity. You reach out to the people you've hurt? Is that what you did with Emily? Did she mean something to you? Carter stammered as the jury shifted in their seats, drawn into the emotional weight of the moment, as opposing truths collided. The stillness hung thick, amplifying each heartbeat in the Ruma community. waiting to exhale. The verdict loomed, a suffocating weight upon the town. After days filled with testimonies and reflections, the jury settled into deliberation. When the gavel fell, a consensus had been reached. The courtroom erupted into a mix of disbelief and muted relief as the jury delivered their verdict. Guilty on all counts. Carter Blythe faced a lengthy prison sentence and outcome that wouldn't erase the pain born from Emily's absence, but would ensure that justice had been sought. As Sarah stepped outside the courthouse, the cool air enveloped her, bracing and crisp. She felt the weight lift slightly, granting a moment of respite as she thought of Emily's family and the closure this trial would afford them. Maplewood wouldn't fully heal overnight. The shadows would linger, of course. Yet now, they had fought for a truth reclaimed from darkness. In that moment of victory, Sarah decided they would honor Emily's memory by ensuring the light she had spread would never dim, nurturing a foundation of resilience in a community forever changed. Aftermath. Weeks passed since the trial's conclusion, yet the ripples of Emily's disappearance resonated throughout Maplewood with a lingering heaviness. The town had emerged from the legal battle forever Alterita collective survivor, grappling with the loss of innocence and the lessons gleaned from darkness. Residents passed each other with a shared understanding. Whispered conversations about vigilance hung in the air, as signs of a changed dynamic seeped into the very fabric of their lives. Sarah had returned to the precinct, but her heart was heavy with the weight of emotional fallout. She had achieved a conviction, yes, but the journey had brought to light a truth that extended far beyond the courtroom. It wasn't merely about the triumph of justice. It was about understanding the threads connecting Emily's life to her community and the shadow left in its wake. With school in full swing again, students trickled back into hallways once echoing with laughter that had dimmed. Tom Jenkins, a fellow student who had once been loud and boisterous, became pensive, a victim of not only fear, but the sense of complicity in a society that too frequently disregarded young people at risk. Emily's influence became a catalyst. A series of open forums formed at the high school to discuss mental health, vigilance, and empathy as community cornerstones. At a particularly poignant gathering, Emily's mother, Laura, stood at the forefront, speaking with a grace that seemed to defy the grief that gripped her. We had to be open with each other, to discuss things we may think aren't right. Emily would have wanted that. Together as a community, we owe it to her and to each other. Moved by the collective resolve, Sarah became an active participant in the community groups that began to form. It brought her solace, a way to channel her pain into something greater, an initiative, focused on safety education for families, along with the necessity of reporting any signs of trouble or discomfort in their lives. As workshops gathered momentum, participants learned to recognize the symptoms of anxiety or distress among their loved ones. Yet, as time waned, shadows occasionally danced in Sarah's periphery, a haunting reminder of the fragility of the normalcy they had sought to restore. Each time she saw a poster of Emily still tacked to a community board, or caught a glimpse of a candle flickering in the dark during memorials, her resolve hardened. In the months that followed, significant developments emerged. A documentary team approached Sarah about creating a piece that examined the case, exploring not only the events surrounding Emily's disappearance, but also the broader discourse on community vigilance and the trauma left in its wake. It was a chance, Sarah concluded, to approach the subject with the sensitivity it deserved, creating a narrative that honored Emily while educating others. As filming began, Sarah stepped into the light, with purpose. She spoke candidly about the investigation, the heartbreak, and the community's response. With each spoken word, she wove a tapestry of hope for all victims and families grappling with similar reality. It became an opportunity to transform sorrow into awareness, seeking to prevent future tragedies from unfolding within the same unforgiving patterns. The case of Emily Wright had transcended beyond the parameters of a sordid crime. It echoed the resilience of a small town seeking to rise from the depths of despair. With hope kindled in the ashes, Maplewood endeavored to embrace solidarity over division, reminding itself that healing was a journey always in progress. As Sarah embraced her role in shaping that journey, a compassionate sentinel watching over her community, she resolved to ensure that Emily's legacy would shine, forever illuminating the path towards understanding, compassion, and united vigilance. Reflection. At the edge of Maplewood Park, she felt the cool breeze graze her cheeks, whisking away remnants of winter as spring unfurled its green fingers across the town. Life was finding its way back into the community, a subtle, tender resurrection. The memorials for Emily had evolved from grief-laden spaces to empowering havens of hope, marking not just a loss, but a commitment to transformation. In quiet moments, Sarah found herself reflecting on the journey, the investigative process that unveiled the jagged edges of humanity, the warmth of community rising amid despair, and the sacrifices too many families faced in this ongoing struggle against darkness. Recollections of conversations with Laura kept surfacing, her words a poignant reminder of a love that could never be extinguished, even in loss. Yet, amid the healing process, Sarah also recognized how fragile that healing felt. The community unified against the threat of silence, but the reality was that many individuals still carried burdens unseen. Every encounter in the park, each child laughing, echoed the weight of their shared experience, the fragile beauty of life, intermingling with the darkness that had once clouded over them. As she began leading a new community workshop in the park, the narratives shared resonated deeply, stitching together the fabric of a shared future. It became clear that moving forward didn't mean forgetting. It meant continuing the work Emily's story had begun. Every voice, lifted in solidarity, reminded them of a power greater than fear, the irrefutable strength found within vulnerability, understanding, and resilience. The town of Maplewood would never fully recover from the loss of one of their own. But together, they immersed themselves in the promise of vigilance, compassion, and connection. With fortified resolve, Sarah vowed to keep Emily's spirit alive, ensuring that while darkness might cast its shadow, the light could still guide them home.